Welcome to the Port City Plate Podcast, presented by Bienville Bites Food Tour. The Port City Plate Podcast, serving up the food, history, and people of Mobile, Alabama for people who love the Port City. I'm your host, Chris Andrews, and loving this episode today. We're going to talk history of our food, history, and people. That's going to be the primary focus of this episode, but this is going to be one of the most exciting episodes I think we've ever done. The Pelican Girls are a parading mystic society in Mobile, and I'm excited to have one of the Pelican Girls with me in the studio. I can't reveal her identity to you because they are a secret society, but I have one of the 23 illustrious Pelican Girls with me today. So please tell me who I have with me in the studio.
You have Christophe with you.
Christophe.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me on the Port City Plate Podcast.
I am very happy to be here. So happy to share this story.
I'm excited too. This is going to be fun. Can you tell me the origin story of the Pelican Girls, first of all?
Sure. So it was in fall of 2020. I was super kind of frustrated with everything being canceled and shut down because of COVID. And it was on New Year's Day that we were with some friends, and I was complaining about it, as I did. I guess that's all I did for 6 months. People were sick of me. And one of our friends actually said, well, look, on Dauphin Island, we are going to have, they called it a tableau. And it's going to be a historical tableau. So if you want to participate in something this year, if you can find 10 to 15 people that are associated with history in some way, then come join us. Come hang out, and you'll need to put together your costumes and your people. And I was over the moon. His wife was sitting right next to me, and I think we almost immediately said Casket Girls. So Casket Girls were sent to Mobile, they were sent to Biloxi, and they were sent to New Orleans. Women of good character. Casket has nothing to do with death. The French word for box is casket that got anglicized to casket. They were all given little boxes. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, so I figure it was about the size of a caboodle, if anyone remembers having one of those. And they arrived here to basically marry the men that were already here. And so by that next morning, I'm pretty sure we switched to Pelican Girls, because Pelican was the name of the ship that brought the first group of Casket Girls to Mobile. So it's a very unique Mobile story. And we had so much fun. It was so great, and actually ended up marching on in Mobile when the Malvillians and Joe Kane and some others just marched down Dauphin Street. And so there's some great pictures of those. We were able to put it together in a month. I don't know how we did it, but it looks great. And then we had the next kind of year to hone our look and kind of create the culture that we wanted to create, and decide that we wanted to be a mystic society, and we wanted to keep doing it.
Right. I can't imagine that you had a hard time finding enough people that would be willing to dress up in 18th century clothing. Well,
corsets, I'm working on them,
yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. What ended up happening was that prior October, the Witches' Ride had been canceled, and so there were a group of us that always did that, and we ended up just dressing up anyway and riding downtown and throwing candy, and so we called it the COVID Coven. And a lot of those girls, as soon as we had this idea, it got thrown out to them, and they were game. They were absolutely game to do it. They love Mobile. They love Mobile history, and you kind of have to be somewhere in the sweet spot of that in order for this to interest you to begin with.
Yeah.
And we've kind of since really enjoyed the reaction we get, because it's a very unique look, and we laugh. We say we're Easter eggs because we're just about every color under the sun with our dresses.
That's awesome. So take me back. So Mobile founded in 1702, like
yes.
you mentioned, and the colony was just men here, I guess, for the first few years, and to grow the colony, obviously, you had to have women.
Correct.
So this
French
is where
women.
you come in, right? So tell me about Catherine. Who is she? How old is she? What's her story? What's her backstory?
So Catherine would have been between the ages of 14 to 19 years old. Which doesn't sound very old now, but in 1704, that was a marriageable age. She actually ended up marrying a cannoneer, and they had a baby. And the cannoneer, or sorry, not a cannoneer, it was a gunsmith. I apologize. Married a gunsmith, and the man was very upset because they insisted on baptizing her child in the winter when it was cold, and the child ended up dying. And he kind of blamed that. So she herself didn't end up, she married twice and ended up having 2 children that died because that was just kind of the way things did. Some of these girls we know a lot about, some of them we don't know much of anything. And so it's been really fascinating. Everyone, once they kind of we drew names out of the hat, and we all kind of acquired that and really have had fun trying to learn as much as we can. We have 23 active members. Each one has assumed a name of one of the girls that was on that manifest.
So there were 23 girls that
Correct.
came over from France. What can you tell me any more detail about them? Like, what would be their interest? What were... Yeah, you mentioned they were from convents, right? Convents and orphanages.
So we needed, Iberville dropped off his brother Bienville to be commander here, and it was pretty apparent by 1703 that, one, the men coming in weren't staying. They were coming in, hanging out for a little while, treating it more like a trading post. That's not a way to have a successful colony. Colonies need families. And so Iberville, Bienville, Pontchartrain, all these names petitioned the king and said, we've got to have women of good character to be wives and mothers. I get a lot of jokes about, oh yeah, you French women, type thing, to actually come. And so yes, there was the Bishop of Quebec, which had been in Mobile, so he knew what they were going to expect. He knew not to portray it as a timeshare, that they should try, you assume, to be as honest as he could with them. So yeah, they started in Paris and kind of went to surrounding areas and were able to recruit 20 young women of good character. And they left Paris in the fall of 1703 and arrived in Rochefort, which is where that they were going to go. The boat wasn't even there yet. They didn't even end up leaving until April. The gunship that was a captured Dutch freighter that was named the Pelican. Iberville was supposed to go with them, but he got sick. Kind of vague what was wrong with him. And remember, this was the only ship that was going to be heading to French Louisiana anytime soon. So yes, it had this precious cargo of girls, but it also had a ton of supplies because there wasn't going to be another one for a very long time after that. So the captain was a very good captain named Duc Audrey, and so he was really trying to balance put as much on there as he possibly could. He even had a little stuff of his own he was going to try to sell in Havana when they actually went through. So it was mid-April. And it would have been quite a sight because the Pelican itself had 56 heavy guns, but they were also given an armed escort by the French Navy provided by the king because the English, all right, once the weather was fine, the English were always threatening. They got them safely out to sea. Now, what we know about the Pelican Girls is listed by a man named Levent. He was a priest. He was the guy that would eventually, you had a priest in the royal citadel and then you had a priest for the community. And he was coming to be priest for the community. He was not super excited about being gifted this responsibility, but he took it seriously. And so I think one of my favorite things when you look into it is he said the crossing was calm. I don't know if anyone's ever thrown a slumber party for teenage girls, but throwing 23 teenage girls into a room and leaving them there from March to July could not have been pleasant. I just assumed that he had already had a room somewhere that he didn't have to listen to it. So it had to have been a little challenging at times. And they finally arrived in what is now Hispaniola. The girls were super excited, get off the boat, and everyone said no. They knew that if they were to get off the Pelican that they would be trafficked. These girls were meant for Mobile. They were meant to be respectable wives and mothers. And I can imagine that was also a dramatic day, having to tell those girls that they couldn't get off the ship for the first time. This was in early June, so the first time since March that they would be able. Yeah, we thought we went stir crazy during COVID. They had not been off the ship. They had Spanish ships. They had English ships kind of threaten them. They had some storms. There was a high point when they went to Havana. The Bishop of Havana said, you know what, let them off. I will take responsibility for them. And he must have shown them a good time. It must have been the sort of thing, and they probably told their grandkids later on because they ate, and he took them to all of the churches and all of the things that you would see. Remember, Havana was already a couple of 100 years old by this time. So it would have been a great outing. The problem was, and this would affect Mobile for the next several hundred years, Havana in the summer is no more pleasant than Mobile in the summer, and it's hot and it's steamy, and we didn't have a health department back then, so there were mosquitoes everywhere. And though everyone got back onto the Pelican, and when it left to cross the Gulf of Mexico, everyone was fine. When they left by that next morning, crew members started to sicken and die. And I like to kind of tell people how terrifying that must have been, because you don't know. what did he get? What's wrong? We now know that it's a yellow fever, which is what is a vector-borne disease. So someone is sick with yellow fever, a mosquito bites them, and then they fly over. Now the mosquito has it, and it can go to the next person and infect it. If I had yellow fever with no mosquitoes around, there's no way you'd get it. But they didn't know that. And so people started getting sick. The girls started getting sick. By the time they rolled up in late July to Pensacola, the Spanish governor was like, you're not, it's kind of vague. I don't know if he was like, you people are sick, you can't get off, or if Ducodre was like, all right, we're not stopping, we're too close to home to stop at Buc-ee's. Like, we're going to go ahead and go. And he gave them water and supplies, and very helpfully sent a runner to 27 Mile Bluff to tell Bienville that this long-awaited ship had arrived. Ducodre just did not have time for that. And so he ended up making it to what was then called Massacre Island the last week of July. And so if you've ever eaten at Pirates, that little lagoon right there, the Pelican was far too large for the shallow draft of Mobile Bay, so Bienville was going to have to send flat-bottom boats to pick everything up. So they had to unload the girls, and they were ill. They had been sick. It was July. You can only imagine that these are wearing heavy gowns. They can't swim, so it's not like they're going to go try to cool off in anything, and they're miserable. And Dauphin Island at that time, or Massacre Island at that time, had some warehouses and some dudes, nothing else. And so to go from Havana to, this is potentially, what your new home is going to look like, must have been really disheartening.
Right.
So Bienville finally got all the stuff, the flat bottom barges sent down. They loaded up the girls, and they loaded up all of the stuff, and it took them several days to actually go upriver and finally arrive to 27 Mile Bluff. And once they did, there's a great picture in the Museum of Mobile of them kind of disembarking, and I think it creates a rosier picture than what actually happened. They had the little boxes. The men there were very alarmed at how sick and frail they were, because they were just now kind of starting to get over. If they were going to survive, they were starting to get over it. And upon arrival, one of the girls, Francois Lefebvre, she was nearly delirious. They put her to bed, but she ended up dying the next day. So she is Mobile's very first yellow fever casualty. Now, after that, it all happened very quickly after that, because you had some empty homes where they could stay because some of the guys were out of town. They didn't know that they were coming, right? They didn't know exactly when they would be arriving. Some of them stayed with families that were already established, but Bienville didn't want them getting comfortable. Ladies, you have a job to do. Now, one of the great things that they had a job to do is that they were not there to be oogled. They got to choose. They got to choose from whomever they wanted to. Bienville wasn't picky. Choose someone and stick with it. We're good. Also, too, in the event that they passed, in the event that the husband passed away, this Pelican Girl would be entitled to his entire estate. And for some of these men, that was pretty sizable. Even if it wasn't sizable at that time, they became very successful, so it was sizable at some point. Now, there were, the problem was, now most of the girls were married within a month and a half, which that sounds like some speed dating, but it was actually slowed down a bit because all of the mosquitoes bit the girls. And then those mosquitoes went and bit the people that were already present. So Bienville's ranks were really devastated by the first pandemic,
right.
The first outbreak, or not pandemic, but the first outbreak of yellow fever in Mobile. 2 more Pelican Girls ended up dying. A name that you might also recognize, Henry de Tonte, was at 27 Mile Bluff. He was an adventurer. If you've ever eaten at Iron Ham Brewing, de Tonte Square is named for him. There's a great picture of him in the Museum of Mobile as well. He had one hand, there was a hook. He died of yellow fever. Now, it is rumored that he was actually engaged to one of the girls, but then he died before he could actually go through with the marriage. I haven't been able to figure out who that would have been. But he's still up there. That's what's crazy. Like, I really want to, I've been up there once, and it really makes you kind of want to go and grab your metal detector and go find Iron Hand, because he is up there with 3 other Pelican Girls and many of the folks that would have died during that. But they were there, they married, they had families, and there are folks that count themselves, they can trace themselves back. And it's been really great to run into these families on the route, or on various kind of living history things that we do, and they're just so excited, and they've identified which girl is theirs and what color she's wearing.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It is really, really neat, and it has just been something I did not expect as to when we kind of fell into this, is just to stop complaining, and you can come do this tableau with us if you can find a history thing to do. So we've really enjoyed kind of developing it and learning more about them.
Do you think that the girls were promised something in France that maybe that they didn't live up to those expectations when they got here to Mobile?
I do know that whenever they got to Rochefort, at first, when they were waiting to board the Pelican, they were allowed to kind of go to cafes and stuff, but there were lots of sailors that had been to Mobile, and they were like, girls, you don't want to go there. And some of them actually asked to be taken home.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they felt kind of duped. They felt like they were not told the whole story. And Levent handled it the way that you still handle teenage girls. He raised their allowance. He gave them ribbons and gifts to kind of calm them down. And then he basically said, curfew. You can't leave the orphanage where they were temporarily housed, but you can have basically socials within the grounds. And that kind of pacified them a little bit. But it had to be pretty horrible to step off. And they talked about that it was noticed the fort itself was only 3 years old, but the rain and the flooding up there, the wood was already rotting.
Yeah.
And we know that. Anyone with a wood house in Midtown, we know what that's
right.
like. And it could not have been some of them probably left. There was probably one or two adventurous people. Maybe other ones were aging out of the orphanage, didn't know exactly where to go, what they were going to do. We don't know. But there was no going back. Once they were on there, you weren't going back home. And they knew that when they left. So I don't know what they were promised. I don't know what they were told. Like I said, most of the things we know about them are the men kind of taking care of them, the Levent and Ducadre or Bienville or Iberville, Pontchartrain, the guys that were handling their logistics. They weren't talking about their charming or not charming personalities.
Right. I'm curious. I know there's a story about an insurrection that occurred at some point.
Yes.
And the girls were starving. What do you know about that story?
So it's called the Petticoat Rebellion. Bienville was in no way happy. He thought that they were just being, sissies, basically. But what had happened was that they had been promised, a home. They had been promised land, a garden. They had been, we signed this sort of contract, this marriage contract, and basically a lot of the guys, some of them left town because they were fur trappers and they were gone. Some of them went back to their Native American mistresses, and these girls were angry. So they bound together and they said, no bed or board until we're given what we were promised. And it worked. And so suddenly there were homes and gardens and everything that they were promised, and they were very happy, and many of them were neighbors. But Bienville was angry because it was causing angst among the men. But their new wives were not, were kind of pitching a fit as far as he was concerned. Right. So it was great. The ladies banded together and force for change.
So maybe the first women's rights.
Right.
movement.
There we go on the Gulf Coast. Absolutely.
I like that. Can you tell me the difference between the Pelican Girls, the Casket Girls, Cassette Girls? I mean, they have a lot of different names. So, is there a specific difference in that name?
Right. So all of the Casket Girls were given these boxes. So all of them, it's very important to note that they all came willingly, and they were all recruited because of their good character. They were good Catholic girls. So Casket Girls were dropped off at 3 places, so Mobile and Biloxi, and then New Orleans later in the 1720s. The Pelican Girls are just singled out because they were the first. And so they arrived on the ship, and so they were referred to. They're Casket Girls too, but they referred to as the name of the ship they arrived on. It's also important to note that France was desperate for more people, to be people, have mothers and women and wives. And so after the Pelican Girls came, I think they must have written back. Someone did something because it was a little hard to recruit good girls after that. And so they started emptying out some of the prisons in Paris. And so there were lots of women that were sent that were accused of crimes. They maybe did, maybe didn't, but they were in chains when they arrived here. Okay. And so the first group, I believe it was 17, 19, actually arrived at Dauphin Island, were sent to Ship Island. And they were left there, and it would have been devastating because you can't see Biloxi from Ship Island. And so they just thought they were left. And once they finally made it there, they were free. They could go do whatever. And there are women descended from those as well that were not brought, were not brought willingly at all, but still made lives for themselves.
That's so interesting, talking about the people that can trace their history and their roots back to these girls, and I love that. I want to talk about the Mystic Society. Talk about, like I said, you mentioned the 18th century dress, but you also have some trinkets that you carry as well on the parade. Talk about some of those.
So all right, you ready for the fashion?
Yes.
The look of the 18th century was so unique and so ridiculous, it has not been copied. So when you think 18th century, you think Catherine the Great, think Marie Antoinette. They were later in the 18th century, but the whole idea was wide hips, flat in the front, flat in the back. Women would not be able to walk through a doorway. They would have to turn sideways and step through. So it's a very unique century to dress at. It doesn't usually get confused with other times in history. And so as part of that initial march with the Massacre Island Secret Society, that tableau then and now, flame lit, really focusing on, and we decided in our bylaws, we are going to have throws that are basically only out of materials you could have found in the 18th century. And so we have a whole section of the group that really loves crafting, and we have oyster shells that we go get in the summer, that they dry out, and then we drill them and we paint and decoupage and make them our own. And so it's kind of funny. Many of the girls have personalized them in some very unique fashion. Many of them have added their names. So it's kind of like the Happy Meals when we were kids, collect all 23, get a full set. And we spend a lot of time, we spend a year making and crafting and putting them all into little bags. And really, if you were to get something from us, it's a thing because someone worked on it. We make a joke about, especially the oysters, they take so long. We want to have interviews with people like, it's a necklace, are you going to wear it? I don't want to give it to you if you're not going to wear it. And then we work hard to give them away, and you see artists downtown selling them for $20, $25, and we kind of laugh because we give them away for free. But they are arty, and they're going to be girly and have bows and things of that nature. And really, the world is their oyster after that. The girls really are creative with coming up with, if your parameters are just the materials, you can do anything with that. And every year I love seeing what they come up with.
Yeah, I know it's one of the most special things. If you can get a throw from the Pelican Girls, it's not like the special moon pies. It's got some meaning to it. And got some significance behind it too.
The only plastic we are allowed to hand out is going to be our cups. We have little cups, and our logos are black and white because we're every color in between. And so it has a little blurb on the back as what a Casket Girl is, what a Pelican Girl is. And that's, we feel for people that don't know what we are, have no idea what's going on, if they get that, it at least explains who handed it to them and why.
So when we see you along the parade route this year, whether that's in Dolphin Island or Joe Cane Day, tell me about some of the girls that are going to be the 23 girls. Tell me about some of the ones that maybe will be parading and maybe some of their significance according to their dress.
Absolutely. So poor Francois Lefebvre, she was delirious when she arrived to Massacre Island. So when she marches that night, she is a little pale, but she's still in a nice gown. It's still a beautiful gown. But by the time she arrives on Joe Cane Day, she's dead. And so she is in white. She has Spanish moss. She is a ghost. We have another one. She was the only literate Pelican Girl. And she really took it upon herself to take care of the other girls because you had to sign a marriage contract. And so she went in with every girl before they agreed and read it to them to make sure they knew what they were signing. And that particular girl, her casket looks like a stack of library books. And the 20 girls were recruited. There were 3 girls that were all sisters. Their family actually was trying to immigrate back to French Louisiana. He was a pastry chef. I don't know what he was going to do in a land with no wheat, but at that time, but they are very often together, and so you can collect all 3 of the burrells, and they're sure to personalize those, and we actually ran into one of the descendants of them at Massacre Island last year.
That's so
she
cool.
she was super excited.
That's
about
awesome.
It. You're right.
What parades and events can we find the Pelican Girls this year?
So on January 28th, we will be in the Massacre Island Secret Society. If you have not been, it is so unique and so cool. It is all flame lit. They are wagons. We are actually debuting the Le Pelican. One of our engineer husbands designed, and all of us have kind of put in some sweat to it so that we have a place to put our throws. And it looks like a ship, and we have a sail on it, and it'll be in both parades. But all of this is creative, and they all have their themed groups as well, and their floats are wagons that reflect the theme of the group. And it is really something special if you have not traveled out there to see it.
Yeah, I got to get out there this year. I know because you just started 2021, right? Is that right? The Massacre Island. Massacre Island Society.
Correct.
And so, I remember, I guess the first year after y'all paraded, I remember thinking that year, like, this is something I've got to get out to. And I don't think I made it out there last year, so.
It's really special, and it's kind of neat. And for us, I feel like it's apropos because the girls went there first. So it's neat that we started there. That was the first time we ever marched together. And it makes complete sense that that's where it would have started. And then we come to Mobile on Joe Cain Day with the Joe Cain Marching Society.
Yep, I'm excited about that. What other things do you do throughout the year to kind of engage the community? What are some other things that y'all do?
So one of our mandates in the bylaws is that we are also all about educating about this story. So doing things like, telling the story like this. We also will go to the Museum of Mobile if they invite us to be part of anything that they would like. We like to stand down there by the French Colonial stuff, by the picture, and tell the story. If there's enough of us, we'll wander upstairs to the Yellow Fever timeline and be like, here you go, 1704. Sorry, didn't mean to. We will also go out to Fort Gaines. They have a lot of history interpretive stuff that happens out there that we enjoy going to. And they kind of stop because we are so striking in the way they look, but then they stay to hear the story and who we are. And when you're actually you don't have to worry about throws or anything, because if they're at Fort Gaines, if they're at the museum, they're there because they're already interested in history.
Right.
And they will stay and listen to you, and you kind of feel like a rock star. Every little girl wants a picture with you.
Yes.
and things like that. So we try to get out and do our best to put the word out. We've done a speech at Gulf Coast with their Gulf Chats last year. I think we have a learning lunch coming up much later in the year. So anything that can spread the historical part of this, because it is very unique to Mobile, and the more people that know the actual story about it, the better, as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, I agree. What about, is there any other long-term things that you can think of, maybe a historic marker, or is there anything like that?
We haven't. We're kind of still creating our culture and having a lot of fun. We get along. We have a real blast, and everyone has a special kind of connection to the uniqueness of what we're doing. There was I don't remember if it was a Pelican or a Casket Girl sign, and one of it got taken out by one of the hurricanes. And if I remember, I saw a picture of it. If I remember correctly, it was in French. Okay. So that sort of thing would be amazing, just keep it alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, social media is great because all of the descendants have found us through, either Facebook or Instagram, and they all know their girl's color, and they enjoy looking for it and finding them on the route and saying hello. So every time that we can, the way we look can stop people and ask questions, and they can learn a little something, that's great.
Right. Mm-hmm. I guess it's probably very hard to maintain your secrecy in some way, right? So how do you maintain that? So, the dress is it's its own situation. All of us you should see us trying to get ready. It's actually kind of fun. Of course, we have to have an eye mask on. Many of us choose to wear kind of these really long, beautiful wigs that don't represent our actual hair. And our headgear can be some of it is crazy elaborate, some of it is not, but we all end up looking very, very unique. And of course, we've all established our Pelican names, and so that's what's on what we hand out. And when we go to the museums, we are still in that. We still have the mask, we still have the hat and the wigs and everything, so we are not walking around with our faces out, so to speak. Yeah. I love the story, and I hope it continues to grow. I hope this is a little short, just a little small piece of how this story continues to be told. And I'm definitely coming down there this year to Dolphin Island. I seen y'all at Joe Cain Day last year, but got to get down to Dolphin Island and check it out. Since this is a food podcast, we definitely could not do this podcast, without talking about food.
Absolutely.
So our Meet and Three segment of this podcast is going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to ask you some 3 questions that may relate to the Pelican Girls. So my first question is, what would be a significant, what would the Pelican Girls enjoy? Maybe a traditional French or maybe a Creole dish that the ancestors may have enjoyed.
So they would have been more like, remember, fresh refrigeration didn't happen, and so they would have been raised in and around Paris. And so I can tell you that they did not like cornbread. They did not like oysters. They did not like shrimp. They did not like fish, which all just sounds very, very bad to me.
Typical teenage girls.
They wanted bread. They wanted what they were used to with their flour, with their desserts, things of that nature. Now, there are a couple of myths associated, and I'll call them myths. I'm going to do air quotes here because I can't find the actual page that says this. But some credit them with bringing okra from Havana, like putting okra in their pockets and then bringing it back over. There are even people, Amy Delcombe's book, Secret Mobile, gives them credit for gumbo. Now, I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum. I've not been able to find that, but I have run into people that don't even know the story, but know that part of kind of the mythos of the Pelican Girls. And if you think about it, it would make sense. French cooking techniques with local ingredients. So I can't say that it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you too. I toyed with that. I've heard those stories as well, and couldn't, of course, find it.
I had heard it was in a cookbook. I cannot find the cookbook. If anyone has that cookbook that was first kind of written in, that's the kind of gist I get where it kind of started.
Yeah. And I think the Cambridge World History of Food maybe had a credit that Mobile originated gumbo there, but again, I don't know what their source was for that either. But my second question is, so do the Pelican Girls, do y'all have a ball? Do y'all have a night that y'all get together?
We do. So we have an after party at the Ezel House. And so if anyone wants, if you want to increase your chances of getting a throw, we leave the Ezel House to march over to the parade lineup Joe Cain Day. So we walk down Hamilton, which is just about 2 blocks, but you might be more likely to get something from us than when there's, on the route with 90,000 of our best friends. And so, yes, we have an after party, and it's just sort of kind of evolved as we've become, and we're really looking forward to it.
What kind of food what kind of meals or food do y'all have there at the ball?
What we have is what the wonderful company Naaman's is bringing us. And so snacks, I will say, in a fantastic French fashion, the morning as we are getting ready there, we have a fantastic lemon blueberry 3-tiered cake coming for us to sit around and eat as we get ready to try to fortify us for the afternoon.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, you can't go wrong with anything with Naaman's.
Correct.
And what do you think about just the food traditions of Mobile over the years? What?
Okay. We'll edit that.
I'll edit all this.
That's the fabulous thing about a podcast, right? It's not live radio.
Yes. This is a hard one. All right, I need one more question.
Well, just ask me. My third, like what I can suggest, the Velvet Pig and Callahan's. We have a shell up there for people that eagle eye and can find it.
Okay. So
what does he usually ask? What's the best thing you've eaten lately, or something like that?
I'll do that on Chris's dishes.
Okay.
Let me see. Because we got into the recipes, got into the anecdotes, myths, and that was kind of where I wanted to go. Mm-hmm. We'll just wrap it up with Chris's dishes.
All right.
We'll just pretend like I asked 3. All right, so our next segment of the podcast is Chris's Dishes, and this is where I talk about the best dish that I've had lately. And I'll turn it over to you to see what we've got for the Pelican Girls. If the Pelican Girls have had an interesting dish that they'll like to share. So my dish, I went to La Floriditas a couple of weeks ago and went for an after dinner drink and dessert. And it did not disappoint. The chocolate mousse is one of my favorite things there. Fantastic. Always hits the spot. And I noticed while I was there that they also have a new food menu at La Floriditas. So I've got to go back. I'm going to report back on that very soon. Go check out Chef Ray, who is kind of redoing the menu there and adding his personal touch. So super excited about that. But look, the chocolate mousse, I know there's not a lot of dessert spots downtown. So you've got to go to La Floriditas and check out that the chocolate mousse there. That's always a good spot. Get a drink while you're there. Just a cool spot to go. And like I said, I'll report back on that new menu. But what do you tell me about somewhere in Mobile that the best thing you've had lately, or something that may relate with the Pelican Girls?
Well, I can say that we participate in the Halfway to Joe Kane fundraiser at Callahan's. Which is kind of a space to see us. It's usually far too hot to be decked out in our normal outfit, but we kind of have a halfway, because it is halfway, that we wear, and we all love that, and lots of us live in Midtown, so that's kind of, Oakley Town Hall. Didn't they have a T-shirt with that? Yep. Eagle-eyed patrons will see there is a Pelican Girl shell hanging up in there on the wall with all of the other pictures. Don't take it. Okay. Just get kudos for knowing it's there.
Get a picture and tag the Port City Plate, and let's check it out.
Perfect. I will say personally, I will have to admit to being found in a bar at 3 o'clock on a weekend because the Velvet Pig is just really... that's in the icebox now.
Yes.
It's just really, really, really stolen my heart. They kind of rotate out their menu, but they had a sandwich, and I forget the actual name of it, but it was that delicious ham that they make, a big old chunk of brie, and a sauce, and then they have this French baguette that it's proper, like it's so crunchy that it's tearing up the inside of your mouth, so that's when you know it's good. And that was absolutely amazing. And then to boot, if you get French fries, they bring you your personal ketchup bottle. It's so cool. I don't know why that just hits the spot. And of course, they have great drink specials there.
Yeah, I love that.
Happy hour. So that has I really, everything that has come out of that kitchen looks amazing, and everything. The birria, is that how you said tacos?
Yes, the birria tacos.
Tacos,
yeah.
And one of my girls, we went there prior to our group meeting earlier this week, and she had a cheesesteak that looked slap your mama good. So that's my current favorite obsession.
Yeah. That's 2 episodes in a row now where we talked about the Velvet Pig. The last episode with Alex Warner that we had, that's where I had gone to the Velvet Pig and had the boudin egg rolls, the Cubano sandwich. And I just can't wait to go back. Like I said, the birria tacos caught my attention, the cheesesteak. I mean, everything on the menu just looked fantastic.
And I think they kind of rotate through. So if there's nothing there speaking to you right now, give them a couple of weeks.
Yes. Yep. Velvet Pig is definitely... They're doing some good things over there. They've been coming up in a lot of conversations that I've been talking to lately.
I'm glad, and I will special thank you to them because they had already rolled my favorite sandwich off, and they had the stuff to make it, and they made it for me. I think I looked so puppy dog eyes. They went ahead and made it for me, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This has been such a fun episode. I could probably talk about the Pelican Girls all day. It's been awesome.
We so appreciate being invited, and you can follow if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram. They kind of the accounts kind of mirror each other, but one of the main sources that I use for the history is the Jay Higginbotham book that probably most of Mobile has on their bookshelf but doesn't bother to read. There are a lot of great, well-sourced stories about the Pelican Girls and their travels, and he has dates. And so starting around mid-April, our social media will reflect if important dates, the day that it left Rochefort, cool. The day that it landed in Hispaniola, the day they landed in Cuba, the day they landed. So we will start posting those historic facts.
Yeah, I love that.
Kind of Right now it's more Mardi Gras fun, but then the education part takes over for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's so cool. All right, good. We're going to follow you along. We're going to come see you during Mardi Gras this year.
Absolutely.
Dolphin Island, Joe Cane Day, all those parades, coming to see the Pelican Girls. It's been an awesome episode. Thank y'all for listening to the Porch City Plate podcast. Always check us out. Check out some old episodes. We got some really cool. I'm loving that we're doing this episode during Mardi Gras, and hope to have one more really cool special Mardi Gras podcast right before Mardi Gras, and then we'll probably kick it back off. After that with more of our food and. But these have just been really awesome. So thank y'all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.